Yo, what's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk about Kanye, or I'm sorry, Ye. I will respect his new name change. Ye is just the best, okay? I think he's just the best. He's the GOAT, the absolute GOAT. He's I think the only celebrity, or one of the only celebrities that I truly admire and actually pay attention to and respect and celebrate, if you will. He is just so on a different level, basically. People love to talk about how, oh, they don't care what anyone thinks, and oh yeah, I'm an independent thinker. I think what I think, and I say what I say, and I'm not a conformist. I don't care about peer pressure. People love to say this kind of stuff, but only for Kanye is it truly, completely, absolutely true and real. He is the most extreme version of that we have in public life today. There is truly no one who is more off the hinges in terms of just truly being on his own wavelength and not pulling any punches whatsoever, not mitigating or hedging or hiding a single ounce of what he thinks or feels. He lays it all out full throttle, and if anyone gets in his way, he not only goes around them and continues to say it, but he will also shit on them and destroy them for trying to stop him. And he just does this at increasingly higher levels and never stops. And I find his whole path to power and fame absolutely incredible. I find even currently his operational style to be just tremendously impressive. I mean, it is so hard to say anything that other people dislike generally if you have even a small bit of fame. Like, seriously, even if you're like a tiny micro famous whatever internet celebrity and you say something that your followers dislike, or even just that some enemy camp strongly dislikes, and you get a sudden outpouring of hatred or antagonism, for most people it's really painful. It's actually very, very disruptive for them to continue their life. It's more saddening and hurtful and paralyzing and demoralizing than you might think. I've seen it happen to many people who are not that famous at all and who aren't even saying anything that provocative. So to think this billionaire at the absolute top of culture is not just saying things that are mildly disagreed with or problematic or whatever. He's like going for the absolute most provocative things ever that you can possibly say, basically. You don't need me to tell you about his current fixations, his current observations, and he's doing a little bit of a speaking tour, it seems, right now on a particular topic of interest. We don't even need to talk about it because maybe we'll do a video about that some other time. It's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's more just that for this video, at this moment, I want to make an observation about the man as a whole, about who he is and what he represents more broadly. Because the details of what he's saying at any given time matter far less to me. I think he's done this throughout his life. He's always just basically had an MO, and that MO is what I want to today to praise and to talk about. This guy obviously just says exactly what he thinks and feels at all times, and he has figured out how to kind of parlay that into increasingly powerful, effects, if you will. Now, something that people will always say is that he's mentally ill. This is what everyone likes to say about him, and people will say this in a good way and a bad way, right? So people who are kind of sympathetic to him as a person and they're acting like they pity him, like they're trying to protect him and say, oh, take everything he's saying with a grain of salt because he's mentally ill. But then also people who dislike him, will dismiss him and try to weaken his impact by calling him mentally ill. But he's an adult and he can form complete sentences, and he says that he's not mentally ill, or he acknowledges a little bit that he has, some mental challenges. Who doesn't, right? But if my opinion is that if a man can say in his own sentences, and he's carrying himself and handling his life, and he says to you that the words he is saying are sober and he means them, and whatever his mental health fluctuations here and there might be, even if they're extreme, if a man is clearly and soberly saying something that he thinks or feels, you simply cannot dismiss it or discount it or reject it or erase it because of any other facts or circumstances about his mental health. Now it maybe is different if someone is kind of like physically convulsing, right? If they're in some kind of actual stupefying, paralyzing, disabling kind of stupor or tumult or downward spiral that is, clearly gripping them and pulling everything down in terms of functioning and basic existence. If all of that is clearly spiraling in some kind of really stupid, self-destructive, uncontrolled, kind of crazy way, then okay, obviously at a certain point, one can point to certain observable variables and say, this person is having an episode, this person is spiraling downward, and it probably is the right thing to do for anyone listening or observing to, put brackets around that and just try to help that person. But this moment he's in is clearly not that. I mean, he's very soberly just saying what he thinks and feels, and he has his own mental models, and you can agree with them or disagree with them, but he's basically going for some of the most provocative and sensitive talking points that virtually no one else in the world would even dare talk about in public. Whether they're right or wrong, I don't know yet. I need to look into exactly what he said, and we need to think about that, and we can give that separate time and attention. But all I know is that I admire and respect anyone who goes for the jugular on whatever it is they think or feel when it is sensitive and difficult and generally maligned by society. When anyone talks about that, it's maligned. In that kind of context, I just find that type of human life and that type of human performance truly, truly remarkable and tremendous. And also, he's hilarious. I mean, he has some really, really good turns of phrases. Something I will say, I'll kind of admit that, no one's perfect, right? He's not the most book smart person ever, and he's very honest about that. He's very frank about that. He doesn't pretend to be a scholar. He like in one of his interviews, he talks about how, he's like reading and writing, not his strong suits. Spelling, not his strong suits. He knows his strengths and weaknesses, and he's not really trying to be anything that he's not. He is a creative genius. He's managed to make billions of dollars, which is not easy at all, obviously. And that guy clearly has really, really remarkable gifts, and he's not afraid to use them. He puts them full throttle, 100% maximum speed, full speed ahead, and just does not allow anything or anyone to stop it. And that itself is a skill. That itself is a kind of trait or ability that is not easy at all to maintain or to cultivate or to improve. And so, I also think that he's probably the most important Christian man in America. I mean, the fact of the matter is that he is fighting for his family, and this is one of the things that resonates with me when I listen to his interviews. It's like, this is not a guy who's just trying to do like abstract thinking. He's not trying to be a public speaker. He's not trying. I mean, he obviously has ambition and a sense of his own destiny and importance for sure. But you can see very clearly that he's everything he's saying and his whole rise to power and fame and influence is driven by like really deep personal emotions and values and beliefs and callings that he has. Like in the current moment, he's clearly very driven by the fact that his wife has sought a separation from him and generally has most of the control over the children. He seems to be genuinely just very, very passionate about rectifying that, and he's very upset about this new fact of his life. He's very troubled by it, and these are the things that he's going through that are propelling him to take these increasingly brazen pot shots at different parts of the culture and to attack different individuals and institutions and groups or what have you. And again, you can agree or disagree with any particular targets or how he phrases it or what exactly he's saying. But this is a man who has a kind of deep sense of the relationship between his own experiences and his own emotions and their most general, most universal implications. And the fact that he translates this through a Christian register, and does so very sincerely. I think he's a very, very sincere and devout Christian. Whether he's ideally well behaved as a Christian is another debate. Certainly not for me to judge. Like, he has very interesting and kind of unexpected riffs about things like porn and that you would not expect to hear from a Christian. But I'm certainly no one to judge his stature as a Christian. He clearly is called by the Christian faith and has sincere belief in it, and spends a lot of effort and energy articulating and honoring that and trying to embody that in his own really interesting, independent way. But ultimately, I think the only way you honor God and the only way you really function in our society as a true Christian is to really speak what you think is the truth at all times, no matter what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. And in that way, I think he's perhaps arguably one of the greatest Christians in America. He's basically what you would call a holy fool. He's a fool for Christ. I don't mean fool in a bad way. I mean it in the most admirable way. This is a whole tradition. It's a whole lineage where the true kind of honoring of Christ often manifests in a way that normal society just sees as ridiculous and idiotic, and that normal society will laugh at. He really is embodying that. I don't know of any other living person who more fully is embodying and practicing the very, very laudable tradition of the holy fool, or the Christ, the fool for Christ. And I just find his whole life and his whole everything he's doing right now, I find it to be just fascinating and just remarkable in so many ways. And yeah, I just wanted to articulate that and explain why I think he's just one of the best. I think he's by far probably the best, most interesting, impressive, admirable, currently living person who's like at that A-list celebrity level. There's just no one at that A-list celebrity level who I find so interesting and impressive in these regards. He's just truly one of a kind. And obviously he's getting a lot of flack. Obviously, people are picking on specific things he may or may not have said, and whatever. Again, to me, those are just details, and that's going to kind of wash out in the larger story of what he is and who he is. So yeah, Kanye is the man, and I just wanted to articulate that at a moment when it seems like a lot of people are turning on him. All right, subscribe to the channel, bitches. Peace out.